Hello, everyone. This is Brett Simon. I guess I should start off with a confession. Forgive me, Father, for I have sinned. It's been, I think, 3 weeks since my last video, so I apologize for that. I've been very busy at work, basically. It's just been a very hectic season, and it's probably going to get busier and busier as I go on. But never mind. I will try to do my best to keep you updated. So I wanted to just jump on and take some questions, answer any questions. I'm expecting. Oh, there you go. I've had absolution from Project Grace Love. No worries. And Joel Embeck official says he's the first here, but. So I wanted to just jump on, take some questions. I want to just point out there's about, I think it's 10 or 11 days left for entering DV 2024. It's totally free to enter. It's a very simple process. I know in some countries there are agents that help people do this. In general, I would say don't use an agent. You don't need to. If you give someone your details, you give them your photo and everything else, they could blackmail you later. They don't always do that. For example, I know in Nepal, there are some good agencies that for a very, very small amount of money, for a couple of bucks, I think, a couple of dollars, they help people with the entries, and they do that for almost everybody in Nepal. But generally speaking, in other countries, I wouldn't recommend it. It just doesn't make sense, right? It's too important to trust your data to somebody else who maybe will wait for you to win. And then when you win, they will say, oh, well, if you want the winning entry information, you'll have to pay me $2,000 or $5,000, or you'll have to marry my sister, or some stupid, suggestion like that, which, is A, going to cost you money, or is going to, potentially cost you money, or B, get you disqualified because you married the dope's sister. And it's not a real relationship, and then you're found out and you're caught for fraud. So just don't get involved in that. So you've got till November the 8th. Make sure you enter correctly. Make sure you pay attention to your marital status. Get that right. List your dependents, all of them. Particularly list your children, whether they be natural children of yours or stepchildren acquired through marriage, or an adoption at least 2 years earlier. So make sure you take care of the basics. I've done other videos on the things that will get you disqualified, and it's the major things are incorrect country of eligibility, not listing your marital status correctly, and missing off derivatives. Those things, potentially will just get you disqualified straight away. Okay, so let me take some marry my sister. Yeah. Let me take some some other questions here. My brother has 3 kids, 2 married and 1 minor. Shall he still include those 2 married and say that he has 3 or 1 kid? He says 1 kid. It's a good question, handsome boy. He says 1 kid because the rules say you list all of your children under 21 years old that are unmarried. So if those children are under 21 but they're married, then he doesn't list them, and therefore only lists the 1 child that is unmarried and under 21. Good question, though. Graname says, when will the USCIS data, well, it's not really USCIS data, but I think you mean probably the SEAC data. It always becomes available on January the 1st of each year. In the middle of the night, basically. It's set to a database time. I think it's in Mountain Time, which is roughly in the middle time zone of the United States. And I can guarantee Zarthesius, bless his cotton socks, will be scraping that data, and we'll have that data very early in the morning on January the 1st. And what we get from that data is we get to know all of the highest numbers in each of the regions. We get to know the distribution of numbers, and we therefore know how many holes are and that sort of thing. And we'll also see how many interviews and have taken place so far in the first 3 months in October, November, December. We'll see all of that data. It's very critical data, very important data. So only when we have that data do we have a really good idea of what the chances are for a particular case number, for example, whether your case number is high or low or whatever. That's when we know. That's when we know for sure. We can make some really good estimates from that. Now, I tend to shy away from predicting because other people can predict, some Johnny Redneck or whatever can predict. And people love predicting. They would predict everything if they could. But someone who has no credibility in predicting, they can predict and say what they want because they've got no credibility. They didn't have any credibility to lose by predicting incorrectly, right? So, but on the other hand, if I do predictions, I mean, I have people telling me I said stuff wrong for years, even though I didn't say stuff wrong. I didn't say this wrong or that wrong or whatever. So when I give predictions and I'm wrong, and predictions can be wrong, it weakens my credibility, I believe, in some people's minds. And they would rather believe in this person or that person because that person happened to be right. Well, a broken clock is right twice a day, right? It doesn't mean it's useful. So if you want to listen to people that, you'll listen to 1,000 people, they'll have their predictions. And, some of them will be right. So what? They don't know what the hell they're talking about. So, so they're right. They're as useful as a broken clock. Right. So anyway, that's when the SEAC data will be available. How do you see the VB progressing? Any hope for the high case number AF63? Okay, AF63 is probably, yes, a pretty high number. Not impossibly high. It's in the sort of higher ranges. We don't know the final highest numbers. We don't know the distribution up until that point. So I can't really say with any certainty, as I was just explaining, about whether you will be safe or not safe. You'll have a better idea in January when we've got the SEAC data. How do I see it progressing so far? It's okay so far. I think, to me, a slow visa bulletin progression indicates a well-functioning system. The more cases that are processed through the DS260 as fast as possible earlier in the year means a slower VB progression to start with, and that's actually a good thing. I would much rather see all of DS260 processing completed by December or January, which is what I think will happen. And then it becomes a much fairer system. You can then schedule everything. Everything will work by the visa bulletin. The visa bulletin will be sort of kept in progress, and when you become current in that sort of world, you are 99.9% certain that you're going to get an interview, right? Apart from if your embassy is complete donut embassy. But, in that world, if you become current, you have a good chance. If, on the other hand, they do what they did in DV 2020, 21, and 22, and they make all regions current unwisely without the correct math to say that that's possible, then it becomes a lottery in the lottery. It becomes a chaotic mess. And it's unfair, because high case numbers will sometimes succeed in that case and low case numbers won't. And so, now if you've got a high case number, you probably want that chaos, right? But it's not fair and it's not correct. It's not the way the process is supposed to run. And so I hope we don't get into that position. That does mean that if you're a high case number, as you are, Fabrice, you have to realize that you are a sort of a backup, right? Somebody else is going to have a chance before you have a chance. They may fail in their chance. They may not even proceed with their chance, and that might give you a chance, right? But that's how it's supposed to work, and so you need to understand that. Now, I saw someone the other day who was talking about Africa 35,000, and that's a terrible high number. That's not a high number at all. 35,000, not a high number. 45,000, not a high number. 50, 55,000, getting towards high. 63,000, yeah, that's a little bit high. So there you go. That's how that works. Anyway, When will be the next visa bulletin? It'll be published early next month. I used to say between the 8th and the 15th. And that's when it's supposed to be, technically, that's when it's supposed to be published. But the last couple of months, they've published it a little bit early, like the 7th. I think it was the 7th, maybe the 6th. So there's a chance they might publish it early again. We'll have to see. We'll have to see what happens. But really, by the 15th, it should have been published already. What's the progress with DV 2023, says Melvin. And I'm sorry you've missed me. Melvin, I think DV 2023 is going well. Here's some signs that I think are going well. The visa bulletin slowdown I explained earlier, I believe is because they're processing a lot of DS260s. The information I'm getting through the various sources I get it, which is through channels, Telegram channels, through my blog, through YouTube comments, I'm seeing a lot of people who are having their DS260s processed, a lot of people who have unlocked and had their DS260s processed again, resubmitted and had it processed again, or had no delay in getting their 2NL. I'm seeing a lot of people asking for unlocking and the unlocking happening within about 24 hours. A lot of good signs of a well-run year. Now, if they'd turn the bloody phones on at KCC, that would be another advantage for us, and we could actually talk to them. But the signs I'm seeing tell me things are going reasonably well, including embassies working correctly, such as Accra. And the ambassador of Accra Embassy, for example, the other day did a Facebook video and explained that they're working very hard to catch up with all the backlog in non-immigrant visas. And I get the impression they've staffed up, and hopefully that means that they'll take those immigrant cases such as DV more seriously than they did in last year. And I've dropped a couple of comments in Facebook chats to the staff at the Accra Embassy to say, let's not have a repeat of the shameful behavior that we saw in DV 2022 from Accra Embassy in particular. It was the worst embassy by far. Many bad examples of embassy behavior last year, but Accra was just on a different planet of bad, right? I mean, it was just terrible. So the fact that we've already seen interviews happening at Accra is a good sign for me. I just don't know how many we've seen at Accra. And there are ways we can find that out by talking to the local doctors and that sort of thing. But that's for people in the country to do. I can't really do those things, right? So, but yes, Melvin, I think in general, things are going well. Right, as well as they can be, given all of the politics and everything else that goes on in the world. Right. Isaac's asking about the photo checker problem. Could you clarify what your problem is? Is it the photo checker problem? Clarify. Ask me that question in a better way. Project Grace, I was waiting for me to show up tonight because we will apply after tonight. Great. Well, good luck. And if you have a question before you apply, if you want to clarify anything, ask it now, and I'm going to try and answer as many questions as I can. So I need to go a bit faster on the questions. Okay, let me scroll down and see some of these questions here. Can I play alone even though I got a wife and kids? Abso-freaking-lutely not. No, you can't. You have to list your spouse and your children. If you don't do that, if you pretend you're single and you're not, you will get disqualified later on because you're a liar. Don't do that, right? Now, when you play, you list your spouse and your children. But if you win and you get selected, you don't have to take your wife and children with you. So there's really no need to lie about it, right? Why would you lie? I mean, it just doesn't make sense to me. But no, don't do that because you will get disqualified, right? Follow the bloody rules, right? Okay. Boneflex says he's from Ghana. He's a DV 2023 winner. Low case number 26. Lots of asterisks, so I don't know. And you still don't have your 2NL. Okay. I assume by your comment, you're saying that your number is less than 5,000 or whatever. It's like 2,600. Now, DS260 processing is probably what's holding you back, right? You may have a more complex case in terms of processing your case. The complexities can come from various things. It can be your education background. It can be your work experience. It can be your name matching someone on the terrorist lists. It can be pretty random seeming, but basically, let's say 100 cases submitted their DS260 nice and early on May 15th earlier this year, right? Would all 100 cases be processed by now? No, they wouldn't, right? Because they would all have been opened in the order that they were submitted. They would, the May 15th cases would be opened before the May 20th cases, right? But as they're opened, they take a look and they start processing those cases. And some cases are processed very quickly and other cases take more time, right? And you can't be scheduled until your case has been processed. So maybe you submitted late, maybe you submitted early, I don't know. Maybe your DS260 is taking longer to process, but be patient, it should be okay. Now, the one thing I'm worried about, the one thing I'm looking to confirm in January, is that Accra Embassy, for you and for other winners there, are taking enough cases each month to meet the demand, right? If they don't, let's say they make their capacity 50 cases, and there's 100 cases a month clearing through the visa bulletin, that have become current, and DS260s are processed. There will be a thing building up, a backlog building up called an AV queue. And the AV queue, a queue of people in AV status, represents a threat to those cases, because it then becomes a bit strange as to how they allocate the next appointment, etc. And so I don't want to see AV queues building up. I mean, there's a very temporary period of time when there is an AV queue. It's natural. It's always been there forever. And there is a particular email response you get when you're in that AV queue. What I don't want to see is an AV queue that lasts more than a month, right? That goes over a scheduling period, because there are more people in the queue than the capacity of the embassy. And so that's a sign of an unhealthy situation at that embassy. It's the embassy's fault at that point. And that's essentially what happened in Accra last year, because they were only scheduling between 10 and 30 cases per month. And the demand was much higher than that, obviously. And they also didn't schedule any cases at all for the first 7 and 8 months of the year. So it was, it was a bad year. But I'm hopeful it's going to be better than that in Accra and all other embassies. So we'll see. Christopher, just wanted to say a big thank you again. Here in NYC, moved here 3 weeks ago from Sydney. Well done, mate. That's awesome. I've had some messages from somebody else who's over in New York. Actually, I think they're in New Jersey, this particular case. Had some sort of kind of disappointed, disheartening messages from someone who's been helping other people. And so I answered this particular person by private mail. But she's struggling to get a job, essentially. And I encouraged her to just go out and beat on doors to get a job, because there are jobs available, especially in big cities. As long as the place you've chosen is a reasonably good economic place, there are jobs available. Now, they may not be the ideal jobs. They may not be your perfect job. You may even have to step back in your career a little bit. I think most of us who've emigrated, such as I have done that. They've gone backwards in their career. And, maybe you're an executive director in some, company in your home country. You come over here and you struggle to get a directorship. So you have to take a manager position or something. And you step back, but then you find, okay, once you've got the job and once you've been in that job for a while, your career starts going pretty fast, because you obviously had the skills that got you promoted in your home country. So don't be scared to take a job less than you thought you were going to get, right? Don't hold out for the perfect job. The other weird thing is, jobs are weird. when you're looking for a job and you don't have a job, it's very hard. It's very stressful. It can be difficult to get a job. Once you get a job, you'll find you get all sorts of other job offers, right? It's just a weird thing. It's like buses that come in threes. It's just, one of those weird realities. And I think it's probably got to do with your personal composure, your confidence in yourself, and that sort of thing. When you've got a job and you're looking for another job, you tend to be more confident, because if you don't get that other job, you're still paying the bills, right? But if you don't have a job and you're worried that your savings are going down because you've just moved to this new country, then you're stressed, and that stress comes out in the interviews. It comes out in your desperation. And it's a subtle thing, but there's something to do with that, I think. Just my belief. No particular data to prove that. Anyway, Christopher, good luck with your getting set up in a new country. It's hard. So all of you that are hoping to do this, just understand it's not an easy journey. It's stressful, it's expensive. Like I said, you probably go back in your career a little bit. It's difficult, but it is possible, and it's worth it in the end. I want to ask if it's possible for someone to move from a different country directly to the USA as a lottery winner. I think what you mean here is if you've applied from France and you're French or whatever else, do you have to fly from France to America that first time when you enter, or can you go from France and to Egypt, and then to Egypt to America? You can go anywhere. They don't care where you arrive from, right? It doesn't matter at all which plane you arrive on. From which country you come from. So you go anywhere, it doesn't matter. Once you've got your visa, you can enter from anywhere. DV 2020, any news for us? We're still in this waiting pattern for DV 2020. We're waiting for the appeal. The panel of judges on September 16th, I think it was, heard the appeal. We're waiting for their decision. I'm hopeful their decision would be good. I think we had one of the judges on our side for sure. We had one against us, and the deciding vote, therefore, is going to be the middle judge, right? And that particular judge was asking some really good questions, was interested, was actively involved in the whole process. But I couldn't predict 100% which way that judge will go. And that's literally what we have to wait for, right? The lawyers have suggested that we'll get an answer in probably early 2023, January. It is possible that the appeal could be appealed again, right? The judges, the three panel judges, will make their decision. They're answering the question of whether Judge Mehta's ruling should stand or not. And either party, the government or our side, could theoretically appeal that decision if they don't like the decision. And the appeal path is then to go to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court gets to say whether they're going to take this case or not. And more often than not, most cases, they say, no, we're not going to listen to that one. We'll pass it back down. It's for the lower court to decide. The appeals court decision will therefore be automatically reaffirmed, right? And so that will be that. That will be the end of it. But my point is, it could take some time, even after January, for us to get a final answer. Okay, so that's the same position we're in for DV 2020, DV 2021, same thing. Right? There are no such open issues about DV 2022. Mainly because, most of the DV 2022 cases lost in the end. They were mooted out, essentially. That basically because the government issued all the visas, there's nothing that can be done for any of those cases anyway. So none of the DV 2022 cases can continue. I actually don't know if Curtis has announced his plans about that. When he lost his case in September, it was like a nail in the final nail in the coffin, as far as I was concerned. But he somehow wanted to keep his options open It was when he didn't get a reservation. There was not going to be any reservation of visas. Later, we found out all the visas have been issued. So there was no visas to even reserve anyway. But when he got that reservation denial, and he'd had a denial on every other thing, he then said, "Oh, we'll decide what to do." I didn't quite understand what he was deciding. It was obviously over, but nevertheless, he wanted to defer that until later and see whether they could do some sort of appeal. By now, he should have announced, I believe, that there is absolutely nothing can be done with any of those DV 2022 cases. They're over. They're completely dead. There are no visas to be issued, which is really what the remedy would be, right? I mean, that's what people would be asking for. So there's nothing going on with those cases. And I think that should be made clear. Right? It should have been made clear already, but never mind. GetNet, DV 2022 winner with the help of your videos and successful now in USA. I want to thank you. You're very welcome. And thank you for saying thank you. And I think GetNet, you are quite active in some of the Telegram channels and you help people, always with good answers as far as I could see. So I appreciate your efforts in helping others as well. Okay. What will I do if I've been selected for DV 2024 while I have a 12th grade without certification, high school without grade? Okay. I don't want to name him again. It always seems like I'm beating up on one particular lawyer. I don't mean to, but he keeps saying things wrong. So I won't mention his name, but there was a lawyer who announced the definition of what the requirements for the education. And he got it wrong. He mangled it, whatever. But let me just cover the definition a little bit. The definition of the level of education required varies by country. It's defined for the USA as being the point at which an American kid can graduates from high school and goes to university or college, as they call it here. And that's a level, right? Now, in the USA, that takes 12 years. In other countries, it could take less time. It could take more time, right? But the point is the level of achievement. It's the point at which you could enter a college or university to get a bachelor's level degree, right? Without any further tests like a GED or any sort of exam that says, yes, you're able to go to university. It's that level that's important. Now, that varies in different countries. In some countries, they expect a high school graduation diploma sort of thing. In other countries, they don't. So I can't really tell you whether your education requirement that you're describing there will be met by what you've got or not, because it depends which school you went, which country you went through the schooling system, etc. You can help yourself by taking more time. Now, you don't have to be qualified today for DV 2024. To enter DV 2024 today, you could enter today even though you haven't met the requirement yet, as long as you meet the requirement by the day of the interview, which won't be it for at least a year from now, right? Could be a year and a half, nearly 2 years from now. So there's time for you to get qualified, and you can be qualified through education, a formal course of education. That's one way to do it, of the level I mentioned. Or you can meet the qualification through work experience, but you have to do work experience in a job that is that itself needs a certain level of training and qualification in order to do that job, right? So you can't just be a sandwich maker and working in Subway or something and qualify that way. That is work experience, but it's not sufficient level work experience. You would have to be someone who manages a team of sandwich makers, right? Because you've then got management experience, and it took you time to train for that, and you've been through all sorts of education about food standards or whatever else, right? I'm giving you an example. So in the same way, you can't qualify as a plumber, but if you manage a team of 50 plumbers, you could possibly be qualified. If you work in a bank and you're the receptionist at the front of the bank, that job doesn't qualify. But if you work in some other position in the bank that took training and you're approving people for loans or whatever else, and you've got a more responsible position, possibly management or supervisory or something that requires some sort of some extra skills, then you could possibly qualify, right? So you almost have time to go out and get a job like that to qualify you for your DV 2024 win, and you only have to do that by the time you get interviewed, right? So so that's one way to look at it. Okay. In Europe, I guess the embassies are going slowly with the process. A friend of mine is 2K and he's still not contacted by the embassy. So the embassy doesn't contact you. That's not how it works. Your friend may or may not have submitted his DS260 early. I don't know. It's no point blaming or considering that the embassies are not doing their work, when in fact it could just be that KCC are dealing with other DS260s, right? We don't know. The one bad way about how they work is that if your case number AF 60,000 and you submit your DS260 on May, the 9th or whatever, you will be processed. Your DS260 will be processed before a low case number, meaning they're going to wait for the processing of your form and other people like you at your level. And so high case numbers jam up the system, right? And that resolves itself by December or January or so. But it's not an efficient system. It's it's probably the fairest way, but it's not efficient. Elvis, how you doing? AF 6900 case is current for December. When can I expect 2NL? Submitted DS260 in June. Would it delay based on embassy? Mine is Nairobi. Don't know about Nairobi at the moment. June early or June late would be a little bit different. Most cases, I would say, that were submitted in early June have been processed by now, and some cases in July have been processed and scheduled, right? But I don't know about your particular case, and you could take longer than others. I don't know, but probably they will still send 2NLs to some people in the next few days. Next couple of days, perhaps, early next week. But if you don't get a 2NL then you'll actually get a January interview, more likely, or get an interview next month. Okay, I was selected, Isaac saying, I was selected in 2018, then had a problem of money in doing all the process. Yeah, it's expensive. My question is, can I apply for another one this year? Yeah, absolutely, you can apply again. There's nothing... there's no harm in you applying again. Just make sure your finances are inside, all set up. Wow, what a name. Wahhabit Sega. Okay. Greetings, sir. When can I expect my email from KCC? I'm from Ethiopia with a case number 14,000. So not now, not this month, certainly. Possibly next month, and possibly the month after that, I would say. We'll have to see how the visa bulletin works, but it depends when you submitted your DS260 and whether you're processed or not. If you want to know whether you're processed or not, you can email KCC, and then it will depend on the visa bulletin to see whether your case becomes current and how your embassy is doing. Okay. Natia says, family is arriving in the US in January. Would you tell me, are we allowed to work right away, or do we need to wait for the green cards to arrive? You don't have to wait for the green cards or anything else, right? The process generally happens that you arrive. If you selected the option in your DS260 for the SSN to be produced, that typically arrives within 2 to 3 weeks. If it doesn't arrive within 2 to 3 weeks, or if you didn't select that option, then you have to go to the SSA office, which is the Social Security Administration office, and that's where you apply for the SSN. Even if you don't have your SSN number, you can start work. You're allowed to start work. Then your green card will arrive typically in 2 to 3 months after your arrival. But the green card is not necessary for you to start work, right? So you can begin working straight away. Now, it's easier to get working and to open a bank account with an SSN. So you want to get your SSN as fast as possible, but it really doesn't matter about the green card, because you have your visa in your passport, which becomes endorsed when you enter. and it qualifies for proof to show that you are entitled to work, and that's the most important thing, right? So yeah, you're fine. Mohammed says, I made a mistake in the photo. I'm a photographer. You're a photographer and you made a mistake in the photo. Okay. I know very well the rules of the photo. I entered my photo. I'm a little younger and could not find a place to change. Am I qualified or not? What the hell? Like, how am I supposed to answer this question? I don't know the mistake you made. You're not being very clear. You might be a photographer, but you're a terrible writer. Like, I am a photographer and I know very well the rules of the photo. Okay, but you made a mistake. You entered your photo. What do you mean you entered your photo? I'm a little younger and could not find a place to change. I have no idea what you know. How could I possibly answer that question, Mohammed? Try again. A man says, did Addis Ababa start scheduling cases for DV 2023? I don't know specifically which embassies have taken cases and which haven't, and we'll only have true data on that on January 1, right? So I don't know about Addis or any of the embassies specifically. I think they have, but I'm not 100% sure. Thank you, Sammy. Thanks for that blessing. Okay, Abid, AS16K case number. Is there a chance of scheduling an interview? I don't know. You have to wait and see. It's not a terrible number. It's mid-range, middle of the range numerically, but I don't know how that sits. You'll have to wait until January when we can figure that out. Mahmood says, this is a different one. Yeah. Mahmood says, I worked in the US Army 4 years, and this is my third time entering the DV lottery. Am I well win or not? Am I well win or not? Will you win or not? I don't know whether you'll win or not. The lottery process doesn't care how many times you entered before. It doesn't care what your job is. It doesn't care whether you're married or whether you're single. It doesn't care if you've got green tentacles coming out your head. They have absolutely no way of deciding this entry gets picked over that entry other than the random selection. It is completely random, right? So they don't know that you're in the army. That doesn't help you, right? Or that you worked with the US Army, I should say. And they don't know how many times you entered, right? So your case has the same chance as anybody else in your region. That's how it works. I hope you understand that. There are some YouTubers out there that crack me up because they pretend to have special skills in getting winners and that sort of thing, and it just cracks me up because it's completely stupid. It's a completely random process, and so anyone that says they've got a trick or a method of getting you more selected is just bullshitting. And if they actually believe that, they're not just bullshitting, they're stupid as well. But anyway, and I have seen some people that believe that. Where have you been, Mr. Siwan? Don't you dare stay out of our lives this long again. We missed you a lot. Welcome back. Well, thank you for that kind message. I'm sorry I was absent. I'm sorry. I apologize. When are you applying? I want to ask you, when you are applying lottery, if mistakes on letters, doesn't really matter. Let's say I was typing in my name, Simon, and I put Simon or something, M-A-N instead of M-O-N. I could do that in the entry. It doesn't cost me the entry. They don't know that's a mistake. And then later on in the DS260, I can correct that. And normally that will be acceptable. That wouldn't cause denial. If you've got lots of mistakes in one entry, it tends to indicate fraud of some sort, that you've done multiple entries and that sort of thing. Or you're incredibly dopey and you don't know how to fill in a form and you've made multiple mistakes, right? So those things, it's multiple mistakes that will get you disqualified, not just one or two little mistakes, right? So, but if you've made a number of errors on your name, then it's probably likely that what you've tried to do is hide your multiple entries, and you've tried to cheat the system, and you'll be disqualified for that. Okay. Please, how could you convert US dollars to the So my home currency. Well, oh, okay. You're trying to. Okay, so the fees you can sometimes pay in local currency, but this isn't really a question for me, and it's got nothing to do with SEAC. You have to check with the embassy whether you're going to be allowed to pay in local currency or US dollars. If it's US dollars, you've got to convert the currency, right? And that will vary in every country. So I don't know quite how that will work in your country. My friend's mum married, says Melissa, but separated. She would like to apply. Does she need to include her husband as they are not legally divorced? Yes, she would have to include her husband. And until they're divorced, she is still married. There is a status which is legally separated, but like divorce, you have to go to the court to become legally separated, and you can't just say you're legally separated if you don't have a court order saying that, right? So yeah, until you get legally separated or legally divorced, you are married, and you have to list your spouse. And if your spouse won't cooperate and won't give you the photo and that sort of thing, then you sort of can't enter. Sort of can't enter. The thing is, let's say I can't get a photo of my kid because my kid or my spouse is estranged and they won't cooperate with me or whatever else. That kid/spouse is never going to go to interview, right? So nobody's ever going to know that the photo is incorrect if I happen to put an incorrect photo in the entry, right? I'm not saying you need to break any rules. I'm just saying, just saying, right? You figure it out from there. Kat, where can we check the visa status for DV 2023 after the interviews before January 2023? SEAC website doesn't have any data yet. You can't check your status. You just wait for the embassy to let you know. So if you've had your interview, normally within a few days, you get your passport back. If you're on AP, then you just have to wait, really. And if you had access to the SEAC data, it would just show that you're on AP. But so what? That's all it says. It doesn't tell you why you're on AP or anything else. You're told that at the interview. So yeah, you can't check it any other way. I have a DV 2023 1 year. I think you mean a winner. I have a low case number 27K. Remember, when you give case numbers and you don't give a region, your case number is meaningless. So 27K, for example, in Asia would be a high case number. In Africa, it's pretty good. So you got to give your region there. Yeah, I think I covered this earlier. I thought the appeal went pretty well, and I'm hopeful. I think we've got a strong case, but who knows how they're going to decide? I don't know. How do you see the hopes of the winners and participants of 2021 and 2020? So is victory near? I think I covered this earlier, right? On the go. Last year, AS 13,000. Yeah, so on the go is just letting you know. I think that that was between March and April last year. The numbers run differently. So historical visa bulletin numbers, I publish them on my website. And it's useful to some extent, but you have to be a bit careful because the years change every year. The distribution of visas changes every year. The methods they use for disqualifying entries can change. For example, I think it was DV 2020, there was a massive reduction in the number of actual cases, a big increase in the holes, which was due to some new disqualification process. And so that would change the numbers. So you couldn't compare, for example, DV 2020 with DV 2018 numbers, and the numbers were not the same. And so it's not a precise method, but it sort of lets you know how things will go by looking at previous year's numbers, but not very reliably, to be honest. So Joel from Cameroon, 4,500 case interview was on 26th and was very successful. Just 2 questions asked. Thanks for all you do. Great, you've got your visa in your hand. That's awesome. Joel, good luck with the move to the USA. Like I was saying earlier, it's tough, it's hard, so be prepared for that. Okay, just be prepared to fight. I don't mean fight, I mean just, fight for what you want, right? Okay, let's see. So just after somebody such as Joel says, I'm from Cameroon and I've already got my visa in my hand, somebody else says, Cameroonians haven't got any 2NLs yet. Okay, then tell that to Joel, who's already got his visa. So no, don't think you're correct. Home. Will there be any sign if people get waived for AOS interview? Does that mean FO won't go through the case, but MBC? Lots of confused abbreviations there, but there are cases in adjustment of status where they waive the interview because the paperwork that you've submitted is fully complete. There's no questions for them to ask, and they review the paperwork before the interview is scheduled, and they say, no, I don't even need to see this person. We're just going to approve it. And so in some cases, the first you hear is you get an update saying your card is being produced. Good news. That's the only real clue you get. They don't. I mean, by the time you get the letter, you will have already seen that update. So that's how it works. Now, they tend to do that not so early in the year. I mean, it can happen anytime, but and it's not that common, by the way. But it does happen, but later in the year typically. Handsome Boy says he's under divorce. We did separately for 1 year and filed divorce, but the judge didn't sign anything yet. Shall I apply for myself only? What should I answer for the marital status? Can't get her picture. This is exactly what I was saying before. You're not divorced until you are legally divorced, right? Which is in some systems called a decree nisi, I think. The system varies in every country, but there is some point in time in every country where the divorce is legal. It's, it's not when you're going through the divorce. It's not when you've asked for a divorce. It's when the divorce has been approved by a court, typically. And until then, you have to apply as married, and you have to supply the picture of your spouse. Okay, so but I mentioned that earlier, right? Seema, I'm DV 2023 winner. I used to wear a hijab when I entered the DV lottery, and I'm wearing it in the passport. I went to the interview. I have to wear it. No, you don't have to wear it. Like if you've now decided you don't wear that hijab on a daily basis, then you just take your photo without that and you proceed without that. It's really up to you. But they are very accepting of your cultural or religious desire to wear your hijab or not. That's your choice, right? They're not going to punish you for not wearing that anymore, particularly with everything that's going on in Iran at the moment. Please, the education qualifications, if you selected high school, no degree, are you going to be disqualified? No, you won't be disqualified. That question on the DV entry, where it says, what's your highest level of education, and people select something, that is completely meaningless in terms of whether you are selected or not, or whether you'll be disqualified later or not. It's got nothing to do with it. It's statistical analysis only. There is also a question in the DS260 about that. But again, it's not important. You still have to show your education, right? So don't worry about that particular question. It doesn't cause disqualification or non-selection. Interview in December, that's good. Does the embassy stamp the visa and give you the passport right away? Or do you have to wait for the passport to arrive by post? You wait a few days. And so typically it's sent by post. You can sometimes, depends on the embassy, sometimes they'll send it by courier, sometimes by mail. Sometimes you go and pick it up. You can arrange to pick it up. It's all sorts of ways. You can discuss that at the interview. Okay. Can KCC finish processing all the DS260 form by December? How many weeks does it take for the processing DS260 form to be processed? Right. So in a typical year, most people will have submitted their DS260s in the early weeks of the process, right? In May and June and perhaps July. And so that's a sort of a bulk of the work. More than half the DS260s are submitted in that first 2 to 3 months. And when I talk about the DS260 processing, I hope that it's completed by December. What I mean is not every case will have submitted in time to get submitted and processed by then, but the vast majority will have done so. And from that point forward, from December, sometimes January, you'll find that you can submit the DS260. Let's say you submit it in February for the first time, and it's processed, and you find out your form is processed in like 2 to 3 weeks, right? So the processing time of an individual DS260 can be very short, can be 1, 2, 3 weeks, can be that short. Some cases take longer, even if there is no backlog. But most cases take a long time because they're waiting to be processed, not because they're actually being processed, right? It doesn't take 6 months to process the cases that were submitted in May. It takes time to work through the backlog. And so it takes longer. Will they process all the cases by December? I don't know for sure. I know they increased staffing in KCC. And now, after the beginning of October, they only need to focus on DV 2023, right? So they can process a lot of cases right now. But add to stream. I hope I'm still live. Yes, I am. I just did something to knock myself out for a moment. So anyway, so that's how it should work. So yeah, roughly about December, we'll see that's fully processed. Okay, I've lost the track of where I am, so I might skip past some messages and questions here, but let me just do a few more. When I filled in the DS260, I'd written that other travel document. At the time you got the passport, is there any problem? No problem at all. You don't have to. You can submit your DS260 using that other travel document. There's no problem at all, right? Just it's not a problem. Don't worry about it. DV 2023 from Algeria, AF20K, DS sent on 7th of June, and it's processed. When will I get my interview? Probably January, February, March. That sort of time scale. You're not current yet. Your Africa 20K. That could go current next month, possible, but more likely the month after that, which means it would be a February interview, right? So, yeah. I'm Laura. Case number is AS 19,000, DS260, host address in New York, founder sponsor in Chicago. Sponsor address are different. Is that a problem in the interview? No, not a problem at all. Your financial sponsor, if you have one, who fills in an I-134, can be in a different state, different address, different everything to the place where you've decided to live, right? So one thing is where you live, and sometimes that's with a host, but that's one aspect, and then the other thing is who's supporting you financially if you need that. So no problem for them to be separated. If I got a new job, should I unlock it? And is it okay to apply for DV 2024 if you're a 2023 selectee? Right, first thing, if you get a new job, don't unlock. There's no need to unlock for that. When you submit the DS260, it needs to be accurate on the day you submit it. You're not expected to keep up to date with, for example, a minor change like a job change. If you get married, yes, you're expected to update that. If you have a baby, you're expected to update that. If your passport changes, you might want to update that. But generally speaking, you don't need to sort of update because things have changed unless they're serious changes, right? Can you enter DV 2024? Yeah, of course. There's no problem with that. No harm in that. Doesn't affect your DV 2023 win or anything else in any other way. It's absolutely fine. When submitting entry for DV 2024, should I mention I'm married and above 21 children, even if they're ineligible. Should I mention them in child number? No. Let's say you've got 5 children and 3 of them are under 21 and unmarried. Let's say you've got 5 children. 2 of them are over 21. You don't even list them. And let's say one of the 3 children that are under 21 is married. That means you only have 2 eligible children, right? And therefore you just enter the number 2. You don't mention the other 3 children. You don't mention the one that's under 21 but married, and you don't mention the ones that are over 21. When you fill in your DS-260, if you're selected, you would list all of those children, right? All 5 of them, because you're establishing, you're creating a record of who your family connections are, because you might want to try and bring those children later on, right? But that's just mentioning them in your own DS-260. You won't be able to take those kids, the unmarried child, the married child, or the kids over 21. You won't be able to take them as part of the DV process. They're not eligible as part of DV, but they may be eligible to be sponsored later. Okay. Please reply my message inside. Inside what? Oh dear. Is my French master's degree also a master in the US? A master's degree is a master's degree wherever you are in the world, yes. Cameroonian, I won DV 2023, played it in UAE. Case number is AF 9059. Don't need to give me the precise number, but it doesn't really matter. Waiting for your 2NL. When do you think it'll come? I don't know. Next month, maybe. Don't get too worked up about when you get your 2NL and everything. It's not a big deal. You'll get it. You've got a low case number, like AF 9000. I mean, it's fine. Yeah, just relax. Thank you for your efforts. Blah, blah, blah. Did interviews. Oh, very good. Approved. Another approved case. Love it. That's awesome. Okay. Ian says, all my documents but the police certs have the same name arrangement. All other cert arrangements is ABC, but PCC is BCA. Same names, just different arrangement. Concerning? It's a bit weird, right? It's not like an automatic disqualification, but can't you get the police certificate in the ABC format? Like, why not? Why do they think you're BCA? I don't know. If there's a genuine reason for that, an explanation, then you're probably okay. But personally, I would probably try and replace the police certificate. You can do that yourself, right? Daryl's asking about CSPA in lottery. Should I fill an inquiry form before interview? Inquiry form? What are you talking about? Or will my child CSPA age be calculated when its application be processed? Okay, the CSPA can be automatically applied. You don't have to fill an information form, inquiry form, whatever you said. The only thing is that the embassy staff, the CO, may not know how to calculate the amount of protection correctly or not. You get roughly 215 days, depends on the year. There's a gap of time. I've explained it completely on my blog, but there's a gap of time between entry and the results, etc. And that time period is added on to the child's age. So if a child, let's say that in this particular year, let's say the number is 210. Therefore, the child can reach 21 years and 210 days old and still be protected. You have to become current within that timeline, right? As long as you become current, as long as your case number is low enough to be current before that birth date plus the 210 days, then you're covered, right? Now, like I said, COs don't understand that very well, which is why if you're in that position, you should go to my blog, find the calculation, and print out some of the links I've got there. I've got a link to a web page, a government web page that explains how it's supposed to be applied, and I've also got some information on how you calculate that date, etc. So go ahead and do that. Arm yourself, because the CO may not know the rules as well as we know the rules, right? And so therefore you want to be able to politely but firmly explain to them, what the rules are. Okay. So a couple more questions. Simplest. So my friend AF16K 2023 had a mistake in her name in her initial DV entry, but it's been fixed in the DS260. Good. Does the CO have access to the original DV entry during interview? Yes, they do. They know what changes you make to the DS260 over time as well. So yeah, they have all of that. What happens if another child is born after filing the DS260? You unlock and you add that child as quickly as possible. Whether you've got the birth certificate and passport for the child or not, you unlock straight away. Do not follow this stupid advice that some people are saying to not unlock your forms. That is moronic advice, and we should all just recognize that now. And people that still believe that, honestly, they're brain dead. So particularly for the situation where you have a child, a newborn, you have to unlock and add that. And what you do is you unlock your own DS260 and that of your spouse. You modify both of your DS260, so you have to unlock your DS260, and you add a DS260 using the Add Applicant button on the web page to create a DS260 for the child. And you do that as quickly as you possibly can. Okay, like the day after the child is born, literally straight away. I'm from Egypt. My case number is 2023 AF35K. Problem is Egypt historically stopped interviews at 18K. Not true. I have a family visa to KSA. Can I change the interview from Cairo? It's nothing to do with where you interview. The fact that your country is restricted in terms of the numbers, and it's not restricted at 18K, that's not normal, but it could be restricted at some point. That applies wherever in the world you go, right? So just because you can go to some other country doesn't remove that restriction. You're still subject to that. So AF35K for Cairo or for Egypt may be okay. I don't know. We don't know the numbers yet. So you'll have to wait and see. Okay. Okay, let's see if I can. AF40K is not high. Just to answer that question. Is there a problem going to the interview when the passport is expiring 2 months after the interview time? Yep, go and replace it. You should update that passport. You can, if you have to, you can show that passport, and you can travel with the new and the old passport, but it's much better to just get a new passport before the interview. Much simpler. Okay. What is your idea about 25 case number for Asia region? Is it too high? Ankara, Turkey. I don't know whether that's going to be too high. It is a high number for Asia, yes. Is it going to be too high? I don't know. I do think that the process is going to be better run this year, which means that case numbers will probably be cut off in at least some of the regions. There are too many selectees again, right? And we can see very clearly, I mean, if people didn't understand what I've been saying for 10 years about the number of selectees that are selected and how many is too many and that sort of thing, they should now have a better understanding after watching DV 2022, because there can be no example that is better in terms of the numbers of people that are too much, right? We had 118 or 119,000 selectees. 72,000 or so were scheduled for interviews. They issued 55,000. They also did some adjustment to status. So we know that, and they processed 103,000 DS260s. So we know that 119,000 people, of those, 103,000 responded by at least sending in their DS260. Only 72,000 of the 103,000 were scheduled for interview, and that was more than enough to use up all the visas, right? So we don't need 118,000 or 119,000 people to hand out all the visas. And that means that somebody should miss out, right? Who should miss out? The highest case numbers in each region should miss out. That's how it works. Will your 25K number be too high? I don't know at the moment. Don't know the highest case numbers in Asia, but it is a risk. Okay, but as I said, it's like it's a sign of a well-run year if there are some, either that, well, it's a sign if they select 119,000 people, there should be some people missing out at the highest case numbers. If they only select 90,000 people, then 90,000 means that not enough of those people will apply to overwhelm the system to use up all the visas. So 90,000, even 100,000 is okay, but when they select 119,000, that's too many, and then somebody has to lose out. My dog's going nuts. Do medical tests before interview include paternity tests of the children and their father? It can do in some cases if there's suspicion. Sometimes there are some countries where that can happen more or less routinely. The doctor might be sort of suspicious. Then there are some cases where people go for an interview and the CEO is suspicious and so therefore wants paternity tests or DNA tests. It can happen, right? So be aware of that. But just, the fact that you're asking that question just makes me a bit uncomfortable. It is really not a good idea to lie in this process to the US government, because you can get banned for life. You can also get held responsible for immigration fraud. Don't lie. It's really not a good idea. DV 2022 winner from Fiji. Suva was fantastic. Spice and I have come to the USA in March. We have a driver's license. We've got state jobs now. You've been fantastic. That's really good, Rita. Good luck to you. Hope it's an easy journey. It probably won't be easy, but it's a worthwhile journey, perhaps. Okay. I'm a winner 2023 with 2 kids and not married. Is it going to be a problem? No, no problem at all. As long as you included the kids in your application, and then if you want to take the kids and or your their co-parent, then you would have to get married. That's fine. So yeah, no, but it's no problem. Just scrolling through some of these questions, looking for a good couple of questions to answer. Is there a problem if my year of birth in my certificates is different from my date of birth in my passport? In my passport, the date of birth is 81, and in your certificates, it's 1980. You don't say which certificates. What should tie together is your birth certificate should tie with your passport. If your birth certificate doesn't agree with your passport, then your passport is wrong, right? If your education certificate says something different than your birth certificate or your passport, it doesn't make any difference. That's not important. Your education certificate is not the document that proves your date of birth, right? The birth certificate is that document. So, you probably mean your education certificate is saying 1980. That's okay. It's not a problem. Right. Germany. Hello from Germany. Just moved to another city in Germany. The embassy is still the same. Do I have to change my address in the already submitted DS260? I wouldn't. They don't send you any letter. There's no need to correct that. You can correct that at the interview. So that's what I would do. I have a situation where the applicant has 3 names, excluding the Sir family name. How do we go about it when filling the DS5501, which only has slots for 3 names? Just use your common sense. I mean, just do the best you can to fill out the the form. I mean, generally speaking, they got space, right? And you don't have 3 names. You might have 4 names in total, but one will be your first name, one will be your last name, and then the middle names, if you can abbreviate those, it's not such a big deal. Just use a little common sense on that. 55K from Morocco, sort of a big case number, but not huge. I see that Morocco is in the accept list in the visa bulletin. Is that a problem for big case numbers like me? I mean, at this stage, it's very early in the year. Doesn't just because there's an accept list very early in the year. It doesn't mean there will be at the end. You know, we have to wait and see. There's nothing I can say really more than that, right? You have to just wait and see. Right, one last question. Let me find one last question here that hasn't been included. Do you include stepchildren in the DS260 that are under 21 years, but we don't have legal custody? Yes. So stepchildren should have been listed in the original DV entry, right? Assuming you did that correctly, you won't be disqualified, but then you should list those stepchildren in your DS260s, both you and your partner. Obviously your stepchildren and your partner's actual children, but they don't live with you. That's fine. You still list them. But if you don't have legal custody and you're not taking them to the USA, then you wouldn't create a DS260 for them, right? But they should be listed on your own forms. That's how that works. All right. Okay, everybody. I hope that was helpful. Rushed through a few questions there, and hopefully I answered your question or something similar to your question. So fingers crossed for that. But I'll try and make sure I'm not away for the next 3 weeks as I have been over the last 3 weeks or so. So you know, I'll get back online as quickly as I can. All right. Thanks for joining me today. All right. Bye-bye.